talking about management consulting, okay? Hot topic today. So let's dive in. And what we're going to talk about is going from federal leaders, some of you are in the federal space, regardless of titles and all of that, to consulting powerhouses. All of you are powerhouses. So let's explore how your federal leadership experience can propel you to success in the high stakes world of management consulting. I got to move this bar somewhere out of my way. Let's keep going. Okay, what is consulting? Consultants are problem-solving partners for organizations. This is how you think about it. Think about the doctor and an analogy, which applies. They assess symptoms, diagnose issues, prescribe solutions, guide implementation, and follow up on results. For example, a state agency struggling to meet compliance deadlines hires a consultant to evaluate workflows, identify bottlenecks, recommend efficiency changes, and ensure successful rollout. Think about if this is something that you'd like to get involved with. So this is what it is in a nutshell. Think about the doctor analogy, okay? Here's some impressive alumni. Indra, one of my favorites. She's one of my mentors in my head. BCG alumni. Sundar at Google. From McKinsey, John Legend, BCG, Jay Shetty, Accenture. Very impressive alumni from some of our top consulting firms. So you're in good company. You're in good company. Here is what this looks like from a firm perspective. They're typically called MBB. You'll hear this a lot as the acronym. Are you a part of the MBB firm? Which one? So you have your Bain, McKinsey, and BCG, your Boston Consulting Group. So you'll hear it referred to as an MBB firm. This is a prestigious, well-known strategy and management consulting firm. Then we know about the big four: KPMG, EY, Deloitte, PwC, largest accounting firms. And you have your boutique firms from your Accenture. That's my background. You can check my LinkedIn. That's where I got my first start at Accenture as a consultant. Allison and Partners, Elderman, Josh, all of these are what we call your tier 2 and tier 3 firms. So back in the day, this was 1994 when I was at Accenture here in Atlanta, over there by Atlantic Station. It's at the top. That's before telecommuting was a thing, right? You would go in the office and you would meet with your clients. Back then, they were conference calls. You all remember, let me know in the chat, the big old moon looking thing you had in the middle of the conference table. And so I would go into the conference room, we had to schedule it, and then we had the conference call with all the various clients. Now, back then, I didn't know that this was a form of consulting. I thought I was just, talent acquisition and recruiting. But we had to use those. You guys remember those moon-looking Cisco things where you had to do the conference calls? I know I'm dating myself, but that's what that was all about. Part of my experience as a consultant. So the differences here, the management consulting versus strategy consulting. Which one would you like to be? Let me know in the chat. Here's the difference. Strategy consulting is more of what should we do? This is what you're going to answer. And you often work directly with C-suite on high-level direction. So think of yourself and your background and your experience, and you as an advisor going in and answering the question, what should we do, Samir? What should we do? Connie, what should we do about this? And you, as the SME, the subject matter expert, you're the person that answers that question. The other side of this is management consulting. You answer the question, not only what should we do, how do we do this? So Connie, help us out. How do we do this? So that means you work on both strategic decisions and operational execution. And from a federal perspective, translating that as a strategy consultant, you could, this is just something you could do, advise a cabinet secretary on the most effective national initiative to launch next year. As a management consultant, you actually do the work, right? You roll up your sleeves, you execute, designing the policy rollout plan, managing the operational teams, and ensuring agency-wide adoption. So I want you to just think about your background, what you've done, all the initiatives and the programs and the things that you've led and This is how you want to think about this. Your federal experience is a competitive advantage. Okay, I want you to know that it's a competitive advantage. Here's how. From a strategy consulting perspective, you have the ability to guide organizational vision using federal policy and interagency experience. Some of you have that. Management consulting, you have the ability to implement complex programs, compliance frameworks, and operational reforms. How many of you have that experience? Is there one that you all are preferring over the other now that you're hearing a little bit about this? Here's some examples of niche offerings with your background. If you've been in federal grants, if you have that experience, funding advisory, public to private partnership strategy, regulatory readiness audits, emergency management operations planning. These are just a few of the things that I've been able to touch and work with some of professionals like yourself. So if this resonates with you, this is how you want to think about this. And we're going to dive a little deeper. Let's look at this. And again, you are ideal candidates because of the complex problem-solving backgrounds that you have. Some of you have decades of experience in tackling complex challenges in government directly translate to consulting. High trust, high responsibility. Federal leadership roles in government mirror the high stakes nature of consulting engagements. Often you're working with a lot of confidential NDA type work with different companies and brands, and your experience and your expertise is valued. The private sector values federal expertise in compliance, regulation, public policy, risk, and transformation initiatives. Federal leaders like yourselves possess the ideal skill set and experience to thrive in consulting industry. So if you ever question, can I do this? Is this something for me? Do I have the background? You do. It's just packaging it, right? It's knowing how to position yourself in the two P's, package and position. There is a rise in consulting. I did a video, I think a couple years ago. It's called CEO Factories. You can check that out on my YouTube channel. But the rise of consulting firms as CEO factories, what this CEO factory means is that kind of producing CEOs from the consulting space. And presently, there's been an increase of about, this looks to be about 25% from just a few years ago to present. So the number of S&P 500 CEOs with backgrounds in top tier strategy firms like McKinsey, BCG, and Bain has increased notably in recent years. About 25% is what I was able to find. So again, very good company. Now, here's some of the myths. I want to bust these myths early on, because a lot of us, especially if you're my age, 50 and older, or you're close to it, we're thinking, well, this is just for the young folks, right? Fresh grads, right out of school. That's a myth. The truth about who gets hired. Some of you might be thinking that, but consulting firms only hire fresh MBAs in their 20s. It's true that many firms have well-known graduate pipelines, but that's not the only path in. In fact, there's a growing demand for seasoned experts who can deliver immediate value on high-stakes projects. Currently, our workforce, you all, is mixed age, right? We're multi-generational, like never before in history. These are the things that I study and I love to study. And so specifically, the demographic of those of us that are Generation X, 50 years or 45 years to 65 years of age, we are the largest population right now in the workforce. The baby boomers are retiring or semi-retiring or thinking about that, right? So not only is your expertise needed, because there is a shortage in specialized talent, regardless of what you're seeing in the headlines and news. The one thing that I always say, for those of you that have been a lot in some of these series that I've shared, is that numbers don't have opinions like people do. Look at the data, not the drama. See what the data says about what you do, your skill set, your experience and background, and where the demand is. Here's the truth about who gets hired. Lateral hiring is real and growing. Firms like Deloitte, Accenture, PwC have experienced hire programs specifically for mid and late career professionals. And I'm going to give you those. So get a pen and paper ready, and you can look these up on your own as well. Specialized expertise, like I was just talking about, over age. For example, in federal to private sector transitions, your knowledge of compliance, grants, public policy, risk management, and large-scale program leadership can't be replicated by a new grad. Clients will pay for credibility. This is something that you've built and acquired over the years, for decades, a lot of you. Do not undersell yourself or undervalue yourself. In regulated industries, a consultant with 25 plus years of relevant experience commands higher billing rates because clients trust their judgment. Way back when, in the early 90s, when I was doing that, $50 an hour was huge. That was the rate. So imagine, and I have a staffing agency, and I know the bill rate for, sometimes it's 150, 175. Again, do not undervalue yourself. You've acquired all this knowledge and talent. Make sure you're valued for that. Your age is an asset. Instead of downplaying age, somebody said that to me recently, position it as institutional IQ. That means your decades of seeing cycles, policy shifts, crises, and successful implementations. This is what you have. Risk mitigation for clients. Clients often hire experienced consultants to avoid mistakes. Now, while I was there at Accenture, Coca-Cola did this as well. I don't know if you all remember at Coke, they weren't tracking I-9 information. So they brought in one of these firms to help them do this. If you have that expertise as an advisor to help mitigate risk for them and huge fines and penalties, that's valuable. They pay a lot of money for that. Imagine if they have to pay $10 million in paying you, versus $2,000 an hour, right? Do the math on that. Boardroom readiness. Senior consultants are often pulled directly into C-suite conversations because they've already operated at that level. Some of you may be ready for boardroom as well. That's something that Samira and I will be rolling out in the community as well. And if you're not in the community, I think Samira's going to drop that link. Make sure you join all of this information if you like learning this type of information, a little different from what you're currently seeing on LinkedIn or wherever you get your information from. It happens often in the community, so make sure you're joining us in there. Now, here are some of the things that boutique firms value from senior expertise, right? Here's the programs. This is where I shared with you all to get a pen and a pad. It's called Careers with McKinsey. It's called McKinsey Implementation. That's what it's called. And it's McKinsey's implementation practice, which brings in industry veterans or industry professionals, right? Seasoned professionals for operational rollouts. If this is something you're interested in, you can Google this, and it's called McKinsey's implementation practice, if that's something that you want to learn more about. Accenture has this as well. It's called Accenture Federal Services Career. You can grow with them. They have a whole page on this. Accenture Federal Services hires former agency leaders to lead transformation projects. There's a lot of boutique firms that offer this as well for seasoned professionals. I'll be sharing more about this again in the community if you're in there. We also have a session coming up for those that want to pursue these types of opportunities. We have a 2-day workday. It's in an intensive because it's intense, but you will be able to position yourself for working with one of these firms. And I'll talk more about that later as well. So some of the boutique firms often prefer consultants with decades of direct experience because they market them as former agency executives or former federal program leaders. I know a lot of you have heard of Booz Allen or Bridgespan. These are just examples of those. So You have your MBB firms, you have your tier 2, tier 3, and your boutique firms. Let's talk a little bit about the compensation before we get into a case study, just to show you kind of what this looks like in practice. If we compare average weekly hours and compensation for strategy and management consultants. So don't want to paint a picture that it's all, rose colored, because you work a lot as a consultant. You work a lot. Some travel. So you want to think about your lifestyle, your quality of life. Is this for you? As a strategy consultant, the compensation is typically the highest, right? Because you're more of a visionary. Remember, I shared with you the differences, right? You're helping them with strategic vision. So 130K kind of starts at the minimum for that. So it goes on up, and as a consultant, it's more rate based, right? So it's a shift in your mindset on how you're compensated. So you're thinking about your rate. And again, inside the intensive that we'll do, we'll break that down more. In terms of hours, weekly, 55 hours, you do work now. You do work as a consultant. Management consultant compensation, about 100 minimum, 100K minimum for this role. And then the hours are slightly less. This is where you're executing. So you're with the team and you're actually helping them execute whatever it is you're working on. So let's look at this case study. And this is Bain. I love this. This is one of my favorites. There's another one with Texas Instrument, the calculator. I think BCG did this one, but this one is through Bain, and it helped Bausch and Lomb win back the market. Let's take a look at this. So here was the problem that Bausch and Lomb, here's John and Henry, and they said, Bausch and Lomb was once a giant in the vision care industry. They invented the soft contact lens in the 1960s and dominated the market in the 70s. But by the 80s, competitors like Johnson & Johnson were eating their lunch with new products like lenses you could wear for longer periods. Their market share was slipping fast, and they were at risk of losing their leadership position entirely. You see my little evil guy there? It was hard for me to come up with an evil thing. You guys give me some, love in the comments. You like my little evil guy? Johnson & Johnson eating their lunch. I had to ask AI to help me with that. All right, that's the problem. Bausch and Lomb said, we need to figure this out. We need some help. They went to a consulting company. This is where you come in, right? You come in and say, hey, okay, we can help you. Let's figure this out. They were a little sneaky. Now, when you're a consultant, you do what you have to do, right, to get the client the answer. They were a little sneaky, those Bain folks. Let me show you how. Here's what they did. Bain and Company stepped in. They said, okay, we will help you. I want you to think of them like corporate detectives and problem solvers rolled into one. Here's what they did. They studied the competition, even analyzing footage of a rival factory from a BBC documentary to figure out how it operated and what it cost to make each lens. I'm going to show you a little bit of a documentary and the formatting and what it looked like. But this is so fascinating to me. I want you all to go and find this documentary, and I'll put the link. What they did, they zoomed in on the video to see exactly what this rival company was doing. I think they're saying it was Ciba Vision. You all remember Ciba Vision? I think that was the competitor, but nobody's really saying. Anyway, they talked to customers, in this case, eye doctors, to understand buying patterns and preferences. They ran the numbers, mapping exactly where Bausch and Lomb was overpriced, underpriced, and where competitors had the edge. Now, I don't want this to get lost on you. Look at what they did. They ran the numbers. They mapped the numbers exactly where B&L was overpriced, underpriced, and where the competitors had the edge. Look at the format. Look at a little bit of this video. Here's what they were looking at.
Dozens of varieties are specially designed for a multitude of purposes. Some for eyeglass lenses, some for use in highly complicated instruments, but all manufactured to the exacting standards of Bausch & Lomb's Scientific Bureau. where come the optical problems of many industries, many lines of research, problems demanding the coordinated skills of many specialists. And here, such coordination is found. For here, optical instrument making is.
So this is what they did. They went back to the lab and they said, okay, this is what we found. I love the way they dressed too. So they got real sneaky. Bain got real sneaky with this. This is what you will be doing, okay? This is what you would do. So here's what they recommended. They gathered all their data. They watched this documentary from this other competitor. They zoomed in to see what they were building and what the price was. And they said, this is what I want you to do, Bausch & Lomb. I want you to compete on all fronts. I want you to manufacture every type of lens on the market, not just your product. Use your strengths. Leverage Bausch & Lomb's strong marketing and distribution to push new products faster than your competitors. Play the pricing game strategically, underprice where needed to win back volume, and create high-end premium products where they could charge more. So that's the game plan. That's what the results, that's what they came back with. So let's look at the results, I should say. As a result, they regained 60% of the market for new lens fittings, achieved a 50% cost advantage over competitors, and they dominated both the budget and premium ends of the market. So these are the steps that you would take in order to get results for your clients. So which path fits you? Typically what I do when I'm working with people, professionals that want to get into management consulting, we start at the end. What is the end goal? What is the exit for you? Is it you creating your own knowledge practice or consulting company? Is it going for an executive leadership position in the private sector or in the public sector? And we reverse engineer, we work backwards. So this is how I want you to think about that. What do you want to do after consulting? Because you saw the alumni from Indra, from the Google CEO, they use this as a space to position them for the future. You may want to work 24, 36 months. Some of you are heading into retirement or semi-retirement. We want to think of what our role and our goal is here. Determine your desired career path, corporate leadership or running your own operations. Remember, we talked about strategy consulting. It offers direct exposure to C-suite and high-level decision-making, good for aspiring corporate leaders. Management consulting. This provides you more hands-on operational experience and implementation skills suitable for those wanting to run operations or start their own firm. If you're undecided, I recommend starting with strategy consulting. This is where you're the visionary. It gives you a broader exposure, across industries to help you choose. So carefully consider your long-term goals and interests to determine the consulting path that best aligns with your aspirations. And it's going to be different for everyone, depending upon the quality of life, your personal life, family, and who's dependent upon you. If, remember I talked about the working hours. Some of you may have to travel. It all depends. All these things matter. So this is what you want to assess. And I can absolutely support you on that if you want to have a private conversation and we can take a look at your background and experience and see what the best path is for you. And just keeping in mind that your federal experience is a competitive advantage. Federal leaders possess decades of complex problem solving. We talked about this, right? So I want you to know this because, especially with everything going on, you can feel as if, your confidence has been chipped away, chipped at, I should say, based on everything that's going on and the level of uncertainty that you have. You're not quite sure, but you have value that you can use as leverage. Here's how you get started. The first thing you want to do, there is a management consultant type resume. So converting that federal style resume into a compelling consulting CV that highlights your problem solving expertise. stakeholder management skills, and ability to drive complex initiatives. Another session that we're doing next Saturday, I think next Saturday is the 23rd, is the Strategy Lab. It's a working session where I will help you with your resume, your CV, your LinkedIn, your cover letter. You will get behind the scenes look. I will show you what an applicant tracking system looks like, as well as behind the scenes on LinkedIn, what we look at as recruiters when we're looking for you for a particular position. I also have a few of my recruiter friends that will come in and share their expertise as well. But if this is something you know that you need done, you will get an actual recruiter looking at your documents, helping you with the documents, as well as letting you see behind the scenes on how the applicant tracking system works for various companies. If that's something that you know you need, take advantage of this. There is nowhere on the internet you will get a recruiter at this investment. I think it's $4.99. I took off $100, and you get it done in a matter of 5 to 6 hours. If you know you need this, do not wait on that, and I'll drop the link for that as well. The other thing you can do to get started is networking with consulting firms. I shared with you a few of those. Identifying boutique agencies and major consulting firms that value federal leaders' unique blend of policy, knowledge, operational experience, and transformation capabilities. Now, in the 2-day intensive that we're having, you'll get a list of all the firms. So it's up to you to choose between joining a firm or starting your own. IBM has this book that I read, and I don't see it, that I have it. I should have had it in front of me, but it's really good. And it shared how they started this whole consulting space. It's really good, but they call it a knowledge practice. So this is something that you can start on your own as well. And what you do is you want to evaluate the pros and cons of joining an established consulting practice versus launching your own independent advisory business, leveraging your federal background or your background in general, if we have some folks here from the private sector. So whatever your knowledge is, and that's the reason why I'm online, the reason why I do what I do at our age. For some of us, the thoughts that we have and the internal dialogue that we have with ourselves, like we're too old, or we're not going to be able to do it. And there's age discrimination and all these things. Leverage what you do have. Let's not talk about what we don't have. What about what you do have? This is my point of view. This is what I share online. This is what I believe, because I did it. And I'm speaking from experience. You have leverage just from being on earth this long, y'all. You don't have those gray hairs for no reason. Here's a recap. Federal leaders as ideal consulting candidates, decades of complex problem solving. We talked about that. You can use consulting as a partnership who assess, diagnose, prescribe, guide, and follow up. Decide on your strategy versus management consulting. There's a few other kind of labels, but for the most part, it's strategy or management. It's kind of like contracting and consulting. Contracting, you execute. You roll your sleeves up, you work with the internal team. Consulting, you're the advisor, you're the subject matter expert. So you answer as a strategy consultant, what should we do? While management consulting answers, what should we do and how do we do it? We talked about the compensation and workload differences. So that's something to think about in terms of your quality of life. And then aligning consulting path with your goals. So think about the long term. We've been through enough that we can take the time, right? Everything that we're going through from your jobs and being impacted and all of that. It's time that we really get strategic and less tactical and think about what the long-term game is. What's the plan for us? What's the game plan? And again, if you want to talk one-on-one based off of your experience, your stage and phase in life and your career, I'm happy to do that with you. And it's free. I don't mind talking to you about that. Your federal experience, again, as a competitive advantage. Your expertise in policy, compliance, and operations can translate to niche consulting offerings. And often what happens, you all, if this is something you want to tackle on your own, it's just translating. There's a language barrier between what you've done and where you want to go. Similar to when you go to another country, I say this all the time, if you go to Greece or Italy, they speak a different language, but bathroom means bathroom wherever you go. It's just said differently. So you're translating. That's why we use Google Translate. So that's what you want to think about when you're thinking about positioning yourself and marketing yourself. Lifestyle considerations, we talked about that. Travel expectation hours and ways to generate project selection. Questions? Was this helpful? Can I see in the chat? That's my only measurement stick. That's my metric. Helpful, informative? What words do you have?